In this prototype devlog/tutorial, I'm going to start creating some of the graphics. As it is a 3D game, Blender will be used for many of the models. The playing field will be composed of blocks or tiles for the different land styles. It is one of many approaches and one I'd like to explore in this prototype. I'll start by downloading and installing Blender. The default cube is the size of the land blocks that I want, so that works. I'll move it and reset the origin so the origin is the bottom center instead of the center of the object. This helps for consistent alignment in the game. To start, I'm going to apply some loop cuts. Using the button allows for individual placement, while Control R allows for multiple at once by simply scrolling the mouse wheel. Using 1, 2, and 3, I can select vertices, lines, or faces. Using G to grab and move, and then X, Y, or Z to constrain movement to that axis, allows for a bit of physical variance in the land block. I frequently use lowspec.com to explore and research palettes. Using a palette for a low-poly style game helps to keep coloring consistent throughout the objects. This site has a wide variety of pixel art and palette-based info. I'm going to jump to the palette section and try to find one with a good variety of colors. Since this game will be outdoors, I want a range of greens, browns, and blues, along with some reds, orange, and yellows that kind of pop, plus a good selection of grays for things like rocks and stones and cliffs. This will dictate a higher count of colors, so setting a minimum helps to quickly narrow down to possible palettes. A while back in another game, I could not find exactly what I wanted, so I created my own by picking and choosing bits and pieces from many palettes. I call it the Hungry Cat Games, or HCG palette. It has a wide range of the browns and greens, which is great for outdoor settings. The yellows, oranges, reds, and beige colors, blending into pinks and purples, cover a wide variety of uses, and water and royal color decorations are handled by the blue. It also has a range of warmer and cooler grays. Technically, I have some open slots for future expansion if I ever need. I think for this prototype I'll stick with my palette. To use this in Blender, I will go to the Shading tab, and with the default material, I'll drag in my palette and connect it to the base color. There are a range of other settings I could adjust, but for now the default should work. Blender automatically maps the shape to the palette, but not necessarily how I want. Switching to UV editing allows for finer control. In UV mode, I can still do edits if necessary too. In this case, I'll add a loop cut. I'll start by pressing 3 for face selection and then selecting all the top faces, either one by one or using the circle select tool. Then I can just draw over them to select them. On the left side, I see my palettes, and when I select faces on the right, they show on the left side too. I can treat the shapes on the left independent of the right, so I can use S to scale and then scale that selection down so they all fit on a single color. Back on the right side, I'll select the bottom part and scale again on the left so they all fit on a nice dirt brown color. Changing to the rendered preview mode, I'm pretty happy with this, but will randomly select a few faces and color them in a different shade of green to create some variance. When doing this, I need to be careful to avoid obvious patterns when repeating the shape. I can also place the faces on the left across colors to get blends within a face. I tried this and even adjusted the shading options, but ultimately went back to the faceted look with no shade blends. Establishing your look and style helps to separate your game from other ones. First, I'm going to save the Blender file into the folder created in the last episode. Then I can export the Blender file into a format that Godot prefers, the GLTF. However, I don't need the camera or light. They are useful and necessary for actual renders, but I'm using Blender just for modeling. I'll delete these and rename the cube to what it is, grass, and then export as a GLTF. I prefer using the embedded format, and I'll put this exported file into the corresponding folder. Using the same item, I can change the colors from green and brown to shades of gray. The warmer gray seems to look better for me for the surface, and again I'll add a few random shades in there for some texture variance. Now I've created a rock style ground block. Once again I'll save the Blender file and then export to GLTF. I did forget to rename it from grass to rock. This won't cause any issues, but I should have named it properly. Switching to Godot, I can open the project, find the GLTF files, and drag them to the folder I created for them called Imports. They come in as a scene and a PNG file for the texture. I'll select and delete the playing field I'd created last time. Next, add a Node 3D as a placeholder or pseudo folder and call it Landscape. Selecting one of the imported scenes, I right-click and choose New Inherited Scene. From here I can add a child node of static body and then select the mesh. Click on the menu and select to create a mesh. This creates an automatic tri-mesh over the surface of my model. Finally, I can move the collision shape to be a child of the static body and then save the scene. I'll put it in the existing scenes folder. The default name came out as grass too. I rename it to tile grass, which I'll use for all landscape blocks. All will be named tile followed by what it is. I repeat the same steps for the rock block. Here you can see where my forgetting to rename it in Blender caused this to also list grass as a name, but it's only the top level name that I care about, so after a rename all is good. I can now go to my scenes folder and drag out the scenes. Trying to align is difficult by hand, so I'll turn on snapping and then can easily drag and align as I place them. Once some are placed, I can copy and paste to more quickly expand the field, but this too has issues. When pasting, they get added as a child to what you had last selected. This makes it harder to tweak or adjust individual blocks. I'll move them all to the top level and then move them to be children in the landscape node. Using the rock, I will do the same, but this time after copying, I'll select the landscape node and paste, which causes all to stay at the same level in the hierarchy. Now a little adjustment and I can try playing the game with the new graphics. During the adjustment, I caught the error in that the player children are not at 0 but at other values. I'll reset these all to 0 and ensure any transform, rotation, and other changes are done on the top level player instead. I covered this in detail last time with the building placeholder object. All is working as expected, so I'm happy. I hope you're finding this useful and be sure to like and subscribe.